Bermeja Island. Take a look at this spot in the Gulf of Mexico. According to old maps, this is where Bermeja Island was supposed to be. A tiny stretch of land that once extended Mexico's maritime borders and could have changed oil rights forever. But today? There's nothing here. No island. No landmass. Just open ocean. So what happened to Bermeja? Was it a mapping error? Or something more mysterious? Let's dive into one of the strangest disappearances in modern cartography.
For centuries, this island existed on official Spanish maps. Then one day, it just disappeared. This is Bermeja, located off the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico. The island's existence was first recorded by European cartographers during the Age of Discovery. According to these maps, Bermeja sat just beyond the Yucatan's northernmost point, off the coast of what is today the state of Quintana Roo. From its prominent placement on 16th century charts, you'd think Bermeja was a well-known and important landmark. And to a certain extent, it was. As the Spanish began exploring and conquering the Caribbean, they used Bermeja to help calculate their position at sea. But like many islands in the region, its exact location varied depending on who was charting it. Some maps show it here, while others show it there. Other times, it was right in the middle of the two. What we do know for sure is that the island was generally believed to lie somewhere around here. That's because its position was based on real, geographical features. To the north was the Yucatan, to the east were the Turks and Caicos Islands, and to the south was the island of Cuba. These references allowed navigators to triangulate Bermeja's position, even if its precise location was debated. In fact, these discrepancies may be part of the reason why Bermeja started disappearing from maps in the first place. You see, the coordinates given to Bermeja could sometimes put it inside the EEZ of the United States. Back then, an EEZ was called a Fisheries Conservation Zone, and it was a 12-mile band, stretching from each country's coastline out into the sea. There it gave countries exclusive rights to fish and regulate fishing within those waters. The problem was, nobody could agree where the 12-mile limit actually ended. The U.S. claimed this zone while Mexico claimed this swath. Sometimes Bermeja was charted inside the U.S. zone, sometimes Mexico's, and sometimes on the border between the two. When Spain lost control of the island in 1821, this inconsistency only became more pronounced. The British, French, and Dutch all had their own competing claims in the Western Caribbean, and Bermeja became caught up in this continental game of risk. For instance, the Dutch West India Company located the island within their very own colony of Dutch Guiana. Though that was not how the rest of the world saw it, the British considered Bermeja part of their colony of Jamaica, and in 1824, the British Admiralty formally declared it to be. In spite of the conflicting claims, for most of the 19th century, Bermeja remained relatively uncontested. Everyone kind of agreed that it was out there somewhere, but no one really knew exactly where. In 1867, the United States purchased the Danish island of Santa Cruz, which complicated things further. The island's acquisition brought the entire question of maritime boundaries back into focus. Now the U.S. had a new bargaining chip and was eager to negotiate. In 1903, the U.S. and British governments came together to settle their differences once and for all. They agreed to hold a formal conference on the island of Bermuda to discuss maritime boundaries throughout the Caribbean. But before any agreements could be made, the United States declared war on Mexico. The brief conflict known as the Mexican Revolution left hundreds of thousands dead and resulted in the collapse of the country's government. Not surprisingly, this significantly delayed the conference, which didn't take place until 1914. By then, the island of Bermeja was starting to vanish from maps. In 1907, the German Hydrographic Bureau removed it from their charts, perhaps because of growing doubt regarding its existence. In 1912, the U.S. government caved to pressure and formally recognized the newly independent Bahamas, which meant Bermeja must lie outside their territorial waters. And so the conference took place without ever needing to address the island's ambiguous status. The U.S. and Britain successfully negotiated new maritime borders, but Bermeja was simply left out of the agreement. It was never erased intentionally, but rather faded away. Over time, as more and more maps stopped showing it, it eventually disappeared altogether. Until one day in 1997, the Mexican government decided it was time to solve the mystery. They organized a massive expedition, complete with ships, planes, and submarines to search the area where Bermeja was believed to have been located. But after scouring the ocean floor, they found no trace of it above or below water. A few years later, in 2009, they tried again, this time using high-tech sonar scans to comb through the seabed. Again, nothing. The island was gone. But where did it go? A number of theories immediately popped up. One claimed that Bermeja wasn't lost, just deliberately destroyed. The story goes that in order to lay claim to its natural resources, the U.S. government bombed the island into oblivion. Or perhaps it sank after being hit by a meteorite or a rogue wave. Even alien intervention has been suggested as a way to explain its disappearance. More mundane theories exist too. Maybe it was just a cartographic error. a phantom island that never existed to begin with. Perhaps it was a low-lying atoll that slowly subsided beneath rising sea levels. Or maybe it was a sandbar, or a coral reef that simply eroded over time. But where did the legend come from if Bermeja never existed? That's tough to say. There are records of native fishermen talking about the island as early as the 1500s. Could it be that Spanish cartographers mistakenly charted the reef or sandbar, then perpetuated the error when copying older maps? Possibly. There are plenty of examples of similar islands disappearing in the Caribbean. Like in 1945, a hurricane struck the island of Barbados, killing 6 people and destroying 90% of its buildings. Today, the tiny island of Anguilla is only 1/3 the size it was after. Hurricane Luis tore through it in 1995, and scientists predict that rising sea levels will completely submerge several Caribbean islands by the year 2100. So it is possible that something similar happened to Bermeja, except it just happened over a longer period of time. But the idea that Bermeja was intentionally blown up persists, especially among conspiracy theorists. After all, if Bermeja was placed inside the USS EEZ, it would give them control over valuable oil and gas deposits. In fact, some believe the CIA orchestrated the bombing in the 1950s as part of a secret plot to enrich a handful of American businessmen. The theory goes that Truman approved the bombing shortly before he left office in 1953. But this was long before satellite imagery or GPS technology, meaning the mission would have to be carried out by submerging men using old-fashioned explosives. But despite all the speculation, scientists have yet to determine what happened to Bermeja, though they agree it's likely a combination of natural processes that finally caused the island to disappear. In other words, rising sea levels, erosion, and tectonic plate movement, all happening over a span of several centuries. Still, Bermeja is listed as a former island on some modern maps and globes, and in Mexico, it continues to be invoked in contemporary debates about national sovereignty, foreign influence, and the control of natural resources. To some, it's a symbol of lost territory, and to others, a reminder that even islands can vanish without a trace. The exact location of Bermeja remains unknown. The closest we've gotten is a rough patch of ocean, somewhere between these 2 points. The truth is, we may never know for sure. But what do you think? Did the US government blow up Bermeja to steal natural resources, or was it a simple cartographic error that lasted for centuries? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to catch my next video. Thank you.